I grew up poor. Not like cat food for dinner poor, but I watched my mom struggle every month with paying the bills, and I vowed never to have to do that when I grew up. I can't say I got rich, but I worked my way out of poverty and am living the American dream. My credit's not great because I had some tax issues, she said. The IRS is taking money from my paycheck, but I got a great new job and my boss agreed to co-sign on the lease. Here she was, a single mother, pulling herself up by her bootstraps. Who else would give her a break if not me? And with that admittedly idealistic reasoning, I signed my very first tenant into my townhouse. I had bought my townhouse in 2006 after my divorce. I had some money from the house I'd owned with my ex, and it was important to me to own again, to have that security to fall back on. In 2010, when I moved into my fiance's home, my townhouse was worth about $25,000 less than when I bought it, so selling was not really an option. My friends told me to look at it as an investment property. I liked the sound of that. Me with an investment property. Kim, my soon-to-be first tenant, asked if she could just give me rent on the day she moved in and give me the security deposit up front. I'd never been a landlord before, but I'd been a tenant, and I knew how difficult it was to come up with 2 months' rent all at once, so it seemed reasonable. A couple days before Kim moved in, snowpocalypse, year 1, came to Virginia, and since my townhouse was unoccupied, the clouds filled her parking spot. My townhouse is in a court that has its own association, which means it has its own rules, like where you can park. Kim didn't shovel the first day, or the second. By the 4th day, they had towed her car, and she wrote to ask my help. She wanted the association to return her towing fee, and I kind of agreed. I wrote a letter on her behalf, and the association responded by accusing her of ignoring numerous warnings and using foul language. That didn't sound like the woman I'd rented my townhouse to. Of course, that was before I found out her first rent check bounced. It takes like 10 days for the bank to catch, which I didn't know at the time, but I learned. I learned very well over the next several months, actually. Eventually, I just asked her to pay her rent in cash. Cash worked better, even if there wasn't a single month that went by that I didn't have to chase her to get it. Eventually, it dawned on me that Kim probably wasn't going to pull herself up by her bootstraps. After all, I had to go to the house periodically to fix things, and I got a glimpse into her lifestyle. In addition to the bed in her room and the inflatable mattress in her son's room, there were several other mattresses strewn about the place. I didn't want to know who slept on them, but they were the only furniture. Kim had no chairs, table, or couch, but her walk-in closet was so overstuffed with clothes that she had piles all over her bedroom, and her closet shelf collapsed at one point from the weight of all the shoes she'd stacked on it. Her son, by contrast, just had a small pile of clothes in his room, which of course had no dresser. My mom was a single mom. Whenever she had any money left over after paying bills, she spent it on us. She never had nice clothes or new things, something she reminded us about fairly regularly. And when we grew up, that guilt kicked in and we took care of her. That's kind of how it works. Kim drove a brand new car, wore clothes much nicer than any I can afford, yet her son slept on an inflatable mattress, and she fell short on her rent month after month. Her lease was finally up in February, but she told me that her company was relocating to Maryland in a month, so asked if she could stay through March. In March, she told me she decided she was going to just move in with her sister in Georgia, but her son was in school, so could she stay to the end of the school year? In June, she confirmed that she'd be out by the end of the month. I was so relieved. Even though she'd said that she was moving to Georgia, I'd had this feeling that it wasn't going to be that easy. I put the house up for rent again, and even though Kim was given due notice, the first time I showed the place, it was disgusting. The floor was filthy, there was garbage everywhere, I was embarrassed. But timing was right, and I had an offer within the week. I told Kim, they wanted to move in July 1st, and I told Kim about it, which worked out perfectly, because Kim said she'd be out earlier in the month. But on the 29th of June, Kim wrote me to say that she might need to stay another week. I explained that that was impossible. There was someone moving in a few days, and she said that, oh, she didn't respond. So then I wrote her back and I asked when I could get the keys from her. At that point, she said, as advised earlier, like 3 hours earlier, I will not be out by the 1st, so you cannot have the keys. Then I tried to tell her that my tenant, the nice woman with children who was moving in 2 days, would have no place to live if she couldn't move into my townhouse. To which Kim replied, I also have children and will have no place to live. She seemed to forget that that was her own doing. I hired a lawyer. We served Kim with a 5 days notice, which she ignored, but she promised she'd be out by July 11th. Of course, that weekend when I asked for the keys, she said she wasn't ready to move yet. I told her I really wanted her to leave, and she said, well, if you want me to leave, you'll return my security deposit. Her security deposit. She had cost me a tenant, stayed 2 weeks into a new month, and she had asked me, and I had stupidly agreed to use her security deposit for her final month's rent, meaning the month before. And now she wanted me to return it. It was like she was stealing from me in broad daylight and then telling me she'd stop stealing from me if I would give her money she decided that she owed me. But my lawyer told me that it would be faster and cheaper than taking her to court. So even though it killed me, I sucked it up and offered her the money. Her response was, sorry, Jessica, I need to stay another month. A free place to stay was apparently a better deal. I started the eviction process. Kim didn't show up to the August court date, but she knew what she was doing. She sent a letter stating that she couldn't get out of work that day, so could the court date be rescheduled? And it was. Just like that, she bought herself another free month in my townhouse. Here's the thing. Not only was I not getting paid rent, but I was also shelling out a lot of money in legal fees. I was struggling to pay my bills. I had to borrow money to make the mortgage payment on the townhouse that Kim was living in for free. If you think it sucks to work hard, to struggle to make a living for yourself, just think about how much worse it sucks if you're doing it for someone you hate. Kim didn't come to the September trial either. It was a quick trial. The judge didn't award me legal fees or damages, but he granted me 2 months' rent and, most importantly, the eviction. The process, unfortunately, isn't that quick. It was another 3 weeks before the actual eviction came. That was the worst part. Knowing that I had won, knowing that she was going to be kicked out, but still having no power to do anything, still having no right to my own home. When they fire people, they escort them off the premises that same day. Kim had 3 weeks in my townhouse to do whatever she wanted, and I had no right to stop her. Kim was gone before the eviction. Afterward, I walked through my house with a feeling of dread. The carpets were ruined, the walls stained, and there were fire damage on all the sockets. But the worst part was the smell. The power had been off for weeks, and of course Kim hadn't bothered to empty the refrigerator or take out the piles and stacks and bags of garbage that were everywhere. so my townhouse stank. When I first bought the townhouse, I had no money left over, so I painted it myself. I changed light fixtures myself. I decorated with my hand-me-down furniture, and I made it a home. My home, and I was proud of my home. After the eviction, I didn't want to go back there. I wanted to forget I'd ever bought the place. I paid a contractor thousands of dollars just to make it habitable again. Several months went by while we tried to garner Kim's wages. My attorney ran a background check and found out that Kim had been evicted 4 times before. I found myself wondering if it had actually been the IRS who was taking from her paycheck or just past garnishments. Eventually, we found out that she was no longer employed. I would like to think that she was fired, that this wasn't part of her plan. But the one thing I learned about Kim is that she knows how to work the system, and I can't help suspecting that she quit before seeing her wages garnered again. None of my neighbors have complained about the family in my townhouse now, and so far all their checks have cleared. Even so, as soon as the market turns around, I am selling that place, hopefully not at too much of a loss. I have worked hard all my life. I made a good living. I even bought a home with my own money. But turning that home into an investment property, trying to make some profit from it, that's just one part of the American dream I've had to give up.